What's up YouTube? Today we are going to be reacting to a video called How to Ask Questions That Make People Get Close in 45 Minutes. I started watching it last night and I thought that it'd be a pretty good video to react to on the channel, so that's what I'm doing. This is my first ever reaction video, so I wanted to watch this because I personally am not very good at small talk and like really talking about interesting stuff all the time. Like, I'm pretty surface level when it comes to that stuff, unless it's like with people I'm really close to and like people I'm really comfortable around, which I think is the case for a lot of people. So let's get into it.
What if I told you a psychology experiment from 1997 cracked the code on how strangers become close friends in under an hour? Psychologist Arthur Aaron ran that experiment at Stony Brook University, and the self-help industry has been getting his findings completely wrong ever since. I know this because of a girl named Ola, and what happened between us is basically a real-world version of what Aaron proved in his lab. Same friend group, so we saw each other constantly. House parties, birthdays, the occasional barbecue where everyone stands around one grill pretending to know when chicken is done. And every single time, she and I ran the exact same script. Hey, how is it going? Good. Busy. You? Good. Work's crazy. Yeah, same. That was it. 2 years. If you stacked up every conversation we ever had, you'd have maybe 30 hours of two people confirming to each other that work, in fact, exists. Then
That's so real.
one night, a party thinned out early, and somehow it was just the two of us left on a balcony with one cold pizza. And for no reason I can explain, she looked at me and asked, "Do you actually enjoy these parties? Or do you also spend half of them planning your exit?" I remember my whole body doing this little internal alarm thing, because the honest answer was the second one, and I said so. She laughed.
That is also true. Like, a lot of times when I go to parties and stuff, it's like I don't really want to go, but I also didn't want to say no. I didn't want to say no to the person that asked me. And it's like if I only know the person that invited me and they are talking to someone else, then I am just like sitting there awkwardly wondering when I can go home.
And said, "I've literally rehearsed a fake phone call. We talked on the balcony for 3 hours. We missed 2 trams. And that one conversation did something that 2 years of work's crazy never came close to. For a long time I filed that night under lucky accident. A right mood, a right balcony. Then I found out Arthur Aaron had basically run that exact accident as a controlled experiment on purpose back in 1997 at Stony Brook University. He paired up total strangers, gave them a list of 36 questions and 45 minutes, and told them to work through the list in order. You've probably heard of it. It went viral years later as the 36 questions that make strangers fall in love, because 2 of the participants supposedly ended up married, and the internet decided the list was a magic spell. People printed the questions. There are apps. There are date night card decks on Amazon with candle photos on the box. An entire cottage industry built on one idea, that these specific 36 questions create love. And that idea is wrong. Not slightly wrong. Wrong in a way that makes the whole thing useless for normal life. Because Aaron's questions were never the point. You could replace half of them and the experiment would still work. What mattered was the order. Question 1 is, given the choice of anyone in the world, who would you want as a dinner guest? Question 35 is, of all the people in your family, whose death would you find most disturbing? The list is not a quiz, it's a staircase. Each question asks you to risk a little more than the last one, and watches what happens when the other person climbs with you. That climb has a name in the research, and once you see how it works, you can build it into any conversation you want. Without the list, without 45 minutes, and without spending 2 years on "hey, how is it going" with someone you actually wanted to know. So let's actually look at what Aaron did, because the details are where the whole secret is hiding. This is really the science of building connection, and it's more practical than anything on those card decks. The official name of the paper is the experimental generation of interpersonal closeness. Not love, closeness. Aaron wasn't trying to make people fall in love. He was trying to answer a much more practical question, whether you can manufacture the feeling of knowing someone for years in under an hour, in a lab room with a fluorescent lighting and a consent form, which might be the least romantic sentence ever written. Here's the part the card decks leave out. The 36 questions came in 3 separate sets of 12. Set 1 is almost insultingly safe. Would you like to be famous? When did you last think to yourself? The kind of thing you could answer in a job interview without your pulse changing. Set 2 turns up the heat. What's your most treasured memory? Is there something you've dreamed of doing for a long time, and why haven't you done it? Now you're admitting things. And set 3 is where the floor drops. When did you last cry in front of another person? Share a problem from your life and ask your partner how they would handle it. Tell your partner something you like about them, out loud, to their face. And Aaron had a control group, which is the part nobody talks about. Other pairs of strangers also talked for 45 minutes. Same room, same timer, same setup, but they got small talk questions. What was your high school like? What's the best restaurant you've been to lately? Describe your last holiday. 45 minutes of perfectly pleasant conversation. Then everyone rated how close they felt to their partner. The small talk pairs barely moved the needle. The escalation pairs, after 45 minutes with a complete stranger, reported feeling closer to that person than the average relationship in their life.
That makes a lot of sense. Whenever you get like deeper questions and like stuff that's more like risky almost, you wouldn't share that with just anyone, then that makes the person who you're talking to feel like more like almost special in a kind of way. Like if you do it in the right order, like he said, like you have to start small and then go a little deeper and then a little deeper, like what the thing was saying. But like a lot of people just stay at the first level like the second group was, and they don't feel as close as the people that actually go deeper. But during the talking, they felt more comfortable than the first group, but afterwards the first group felt closer because they went deeper and more personal type stuff.
Listen to that again. Not it feeling closer to that person than the average relationship in their life. Listen to that again. Not closer than the average stranger. Closer than the average relationship they already had. One conversation outperformed years of friendships, co-workers, and some family members. Same amount of time, same words per minute, completely different outcome. So the variable was never talking. The variable was what the questions demanded. And what set 3 demands is something very specific. When you answer, when did you last cry in front of someone, you're handing the other person information they could use against you. They could laugh, they could pull a face, they could tell the whole friend group. Every answer in set 3 is a small bet that they want. Psychologists call it self-disclosure, but I think the better word for what it costs you is social risk. Risk is the thing set 1 doesn't have, set 3 is full of, and your last 100 conversations have been carefully designed to avoid.
Yeah, if you think about like people that you have taken those the self-disclosure or social risk, and then they do something like tell it to a bunch of other people or like get mad at you for it, they like don't take it in the right way, then you're like, okay, I'm not gonna do that to that person again. And it's like you aren't gonna be as close to them because whenever you talk to them, they don't take it with the friendship and stuff in mind, because they've also only done the small talk surface level. So when you go deeper, they don't know how to like handle it or something. Whenever you see those people in your relationship with them, and then the other people that take it well, the people that take it well, you're most likely a lot closer to.
Is full of, and your last 100 conversations have been carefully designed to avoid. The card decks sell you the questions, but the questions were just the staircase. The thing that builds connection is the climbing. So why does it work like this? Why does handing someone the ability to hurt you make them like you more instead of less? Because on paper that sounds like terrible strategy. Researcher Breen Brown spent years studying exactly this, and her conclusion maps directly onto Aaron's data. Vulnerability is not weakness, it's the mechanism. When you expose something real about yourself, you're not just sharing information, you're performing an act of trust that invites reciprocity, which is exactly what happened on that balcony. Think about what actually happens in that balcony moment. When Ola asked me if I secretly plan my exits from parties, she wasn't really asking about parties, she was making an offer. The full message underneath was, I'm about to show you something slightly embarrassing about myself, and I'm trusting you not to punish me for it. And when I answered honestly instead of deflecting, I accepted the offer and matched it. Two people each placed a small bet on the other person's decency, and both bets paid off. That's not a conversation anymore. That's a transaction of trust. And trust, it turns out, is the actual currency of closeness. The words are just the packaging. There's a name for this in the research. Psychologists Irvin Altman and Dalmas Taylor called it social penetration theory back in 1973, which is a genuinely unfortunate name for a theory about friendship. Their model says every person is built like an onion. The outer layer is public stuff, your job, your hometown, your opinion about the weather. Underneath that sit your actual opinions, then your fears, your ambitions, your weird private rituals, and somewhere near the core, the things you've told maybe two people in your life. Relationships deepen one layer at a time, and the only way through a layer is for someone to voluntarily peel it. Nobody can do it for you. A relationship is just two onions taking turns. And here's the detail that explains everything about your social life. The layers only open under matched pressure. Researchers call it the reciprocity of self-disclosure, and it's one of the most reliably replicated findings in social psychology. When someone reveals a layer 3 thing and you respond with a layer 1 thing, the conversation doesn't stay at 3, it snaps back to 1. And it usually stays there because the person who took the risk just learned the bet doesn't pay with you. You've felt this. You've told someone something real and gotten back, "That's crazy." Anyway, you remember exactly who did that to you. But when disclosure gets matched, I mean the social risk, something interesting happens. Each exchange raises the safe ceiling for the next one. Your honesty licenses mine licenses your next one, and the conversation ratchets. Aaron didn't invent that ratchet. He just built a staircase that forces two strangers to climb it on a schedule, which means the 2 years all night spent on "hey, how is it going?" weren't a failure of chemistry. We had chemistry for 3 hours straight the moment someone moved first. Those 2 years were a standoff. Two people standing at the bottom of a staircase, each holding a perfectly good first step, each waiting for the other one to spend it. Most of your shallow relationships are not shallow people. They are unstarted climbs. Now, here's the uncomfortable part. If the ratchet is real, then small talk isn't neutral. It's not a warm-up that simply hasn't worked yet. It's an active signal. Every question carries a second message about how much you're willing to risk. When you ask someone, "How was your weekend?" for the 40th consecutive Monday, the literal question is about the weekend, but the meta message is, "I am keeping this at layer 1, and I expect you to do the same." And people are astonishingly good at reading that message. They answer at exactly the depth you asked. Good.
Exactly, bro. That makes so much sense.
Astonishingly good at reading that message. They answer at exactly the depth you asked. Good. Quiet. Yours? The conversation isn't failing. It's succeeding perfectly at the level you set it. This is why some people can know each other for a decade and stay strangers. There's a version of this everyone has seen. Two neighbors who have greeted each other roughly 2,000 times and could not tell you the other one's biggest fear, their actual opinion of their job, or whether they are happy.
Something I do a lot is like, I do that, I'm bad at that order. I'm bad at the order of like level 1, level 2, level 3. I am like fine opening up to people. Like I would say I'm pretty like vulnerable in like the way I talk to people. Like I would stand up on a stage and tell people how I was like 11 years old and started watching pornography and stuff like that. And I think a lot of people have a hard time admitting that kind of stuff. But for me, whenever it's not like a scripted thing like that, like sometimes when you're talking about like stuff you struggled with, it's like about a essay or a video question thing like you're doing for a purpose. But like in conversations and stuff, I have a hard time going from level 1 to level 2, level 3. I have found myself going like level 1, level 3, and like skipping level 2, and then people are like, that's like, I can kind of feel they're like, that's like deeper than I thought we were gonna go type stuff. And then that makes me like not want to go that deep and just kind of like follow what the other person's doing. Like if they are on level 1, I just stay on level 1. I don't usually try to get to the next level at all. But I have been getting better at that recently as I start to value conversations and interactions with people more and more.
Not tell you the other one's biggest fear, their actual opinion of their job, or whether they are happy. 2,000 interactions. 0 layers. Meanwhile, 2 strangers on a delayed night train cover all of it in 4 hours. Precisely because they will never see each other again, and the risk feels free. Researchers literally call it the stranger on a train phenomenon.
That's what I've told people before, because I'm also like the type of person that will kind of do anything I think is funny, as long as it's like, if it's not like hurting anyone else or like inappropriate in any ways and stuff like that. But like I'll embarrass myself in public, and a lot of people are like if I'm like, oh dude, you should do that, and they're like, no, I can't, there's people, and I'm like, then what are the chances that you're gonna see these people again? Like, we're on vacation, we're not even in our home state, and you don't want to like do something in front of these people that might be fun for you just because it'll embarrass you, like
each other again, and the risk feels free. Researchers literally call it the stranger on a train phenomenon. The depth was never about time, it was about cost. And safe questions have one more nasty property. They are infinite. There is always another weekend, another weather front, another housework. You can run that loop forever and it never escalates on its own, because no step on the staircase is ever taken by accident. Which means the comfortable strategy, the one your nervous system loves, the one where you wait for death to just happen one day, has a mathematical success rate of roughly never. You're waiting for an elevator in a building that only has stairs. The brutal version of this, boring conversation are not a personality problem, they are a pricing problem. You've been offering people layer 1 prices and quietly resenting that nobody sells you layer 3. But, and this is the part that matters, the answer is not to swing to the other extreme. Everyone knows that person who treats minute 4 of meeting someone as the right moment for, so what's your biggest childhood trauma? That doesn't read as deep, it reads as malfunction. Because a risky question only works when the trust to hold the answer already exists. And trust is built by previous steps, not by the jump. Skipping the staircase doesn't get you to the top faster. It gets you a person that is slowly backing away from you. So the skill is not asking deep questions. The skill is escalation, knowing what the next step is and how to make taking it feel almost effortless, which is exactly what the rest of this video is. Here's the system. Think of every conversation as having 4 floors, and your only job is to climb 1 floor at a time. Floor 1 is facts. Where someone is from, what they do, how they know the host. This is the lobby. Everyone starts here and there's nothing wrong with it, as long as you remember it's a lobby and not an apartment. You're not trying to live here, you're looking for the stairs. Floor 2 is opinions and preferences. Not what do you do, but do you actually like it? Not where did you go on holiday, but what kind of trip would you never do again? Notice the risk ticks upward. An opinion can be disagreed with. Preference can be judged. It's a small bet, but it's a real one. And most people are quietly thrilled to be asked because nobody asks. The world is starving for floor 2 and drowning in floor 1. Floor 3 is experiences and feelings. What something was actually like for them. The move here is taking the fact they already gave you and asking for the inside of it. They mentioned they moved to a new city, so what was the first month really like? Did you know anyone? They mentioned they switched careers, so was that scary or was it a relief? You're not introducing new topics, you're opening doors in topics they already brought into the room. That's what makes it feel natural, instead of interrogative. They handed you the doorknob. This is also where active listening becomes the actual skill, because floor 3 answers are long and layered, and the only way you find the next door is by actually hearing what they said, not by preparing your next question while they are still talking. And floor 4 is the honest stuff. Doubts, fears, what they would change, what they're proud of and can't say out loud. The balcony floor. You don't get here through a clever question. You get here because floors 1 through 3 went well, both directions, and the trust account can now cover the withdrawal. This is what people with high emotional intelligence do naturally, that most of us have to learn deliberately. They read which floor a person is on, and they meet them there. 2 rules govern the whole climb. Rule 1. You can only skip 1 floor at most, and only when the moment is unusually warm. Usually it's not. 2 floors is a big jump, and people flinch from them. Rule 2. Every floor needs time. And I mean actual time. The Aaron study compressed the climb into 45 minutes, because a psychology lab is a pressure cooker with a consent form. Real life isn't. In real life, this staircase takes hours of total conversation, sometimes spread across weeks. Meeting someone at 7 and going for floor 4 at 7:15 isn't escalation, it's a jump scare. The ladder is patient. That patience is not lost time. The patience is the proof that floor 4, when you reach it, actually means something. And one more thing about about direction. The ladder is not a script where you fire questions and they confess. Every floor applies to both people. When they answer a floor 2 question, you volunteer your floor 2 back, unprompted, before asking anything else. Question, answer, match. Question, answer, match. The moment it becomes question, answer, you've stopped being a person and became a podcast host, and they can feel the microphone you're holding. So that's the map. Facts, opinions, experiences, honesty. 1 floor at a time, both people climbing, hours, not minutes. Which leaves the obvious problem. Climbing is still scary. Even with a map, that moment before a floor 3 question still spikes your pulse. So the rest of this is about the tool that makes the scary steps cheap. Okay, quick pause. Because I want to do something slightly different for a minute. Think of one specific person right now. Not people in general. One name. Someone you've known for a while. Someone you actually like. And someone who is still, if you're honest, basically a stranger. The coworker you eat lunch with. The friend of a friend you've seen at every gathering for 2 years. The person you text memes to but have never once asked a real question. Got the name? Good. Now ask yourself which floor you two are on. And I would bet money it's 1. Maybe 1.5. Not because either of you is boring, not because there is no chemistry. You live there because of one specific moment that has happened between you, probably dozens of times, and been lost every time. It's that half second where a realer question shows up in your head. Do you actually like your job? Are you okay? You seemed off lately. Why did you really move here? The question arrives, your pulse ticks up, you weigh it, and you say, anyway, crazy weather. The staircase was right there, your foot was in the air, and you put it back down. That moment has a cost, and the cost is invisible because it's paid in things that never happen. The conversation on the balcony that never happens. The friendship that stays a hallway greeting for a decade. Nobody sees the bill. You just live in a life with thinner relationships than the ones available to you, 2 feet to your left. So the real question of this whole video is not how deep conversations work. It's what would make you put that foot down on the next stair instead of pulling it back. Fear of that step is the entire game. And there's a 5-word sentence that drops the price of that step by about 90%. The sentence is, can I ask you something honest? That's it. 5 words said before the question instead of just firing the question. Can I ask you something honest? Can I ask you something a bit personal? Mind if I ask you a real one? Same move. Pick your flavor. It looks like politeness. It's actually one of the most mechanically loaded sentences in the language, because it does 4 separate jobs in under 2 seconds. Job 1. It converts an ambush into an invitation. A floor-free question out of nowhere makes people flinch because they didn't choose it. The preface hands them the choice, and the moment depth becomes something they opted into, their whole posture toward it changes. Same question, completely different reception, purely because a doorbell rang before the door opened. Job 2. It builds a commitment. When someone says yes, go ahead, they've made a public micro-commitment to being open. Robert Cialdini built half a career at Arizona State on what commitment does to behavior. Once people agree to something out loud, they bend over backwards to stay consistent with it. So the person who said sure 10 seconds ago now finds it genuinely awkward to take offense at the question they just approved. You didn't trick them, you just let them lock the door from the inside. Job 3. It spikes curiosity to a level that makes refusal almost impossible. Think about what happens in your own head when someone says, can I ask you something honest? Everything stops. What question? What have they noticed about me? You could not stop them now if you wanted to. In practice, the rejection rate of that preface is somewhere around never. People will physically lean in. You've built a tiny movie trailer for your own question. And job 4, the quiet one, it signals that you know the question is a step up, which tells the other person you can read floors at all. That alone separates you from both the small talkers who never climb and the trauma dumpers who don't know the building has floors. The preface is you showing your respect for the staircase, out loud. One warning, because every good tool has a way to hold it wrong. The preface is a doorbell, not a hammer. If someone says yes but their face says no, or they answer in 4 words and look at their drink, that's the answer. You ring once. The whole reason the technique works is that the choice is real, and the fastest way to torch it is to treat their yes as a contract instead of kindness. Used right, it's maybe 1 preface per conversation, 2 at most. It marks a moment as special. Use it every 3rd question, and you're just a man announcing his questions like a train conductor. And notice, by the way, what Ola did on that balcony. She didn't use the sentence. She got lucky with timing instead, and it took her 2 years. The preface exists so you don't have to wait for the thinned out party and the cold pizza. It's manufactured timing, the balcony on demand. There's one piece left, and it's the piece that makes everything else work. The ladder runs both ways. You can't only ask. Remember the ratchet from earlier. Disclosure gets matched, or the conversation snaps back to the lobby, which means every rule about their answers applies to your offers too. Sometimes the next step on the staircase is not a question at all. It's you volunteering a floor-free thing about yourself unprompted. The thing you're worried about. The reason you really left that job. When you do that, you're not sharing. You're extending an invitation written in risk, and the other person reads it instantly. This is now a place where real things can be said. And the preface works in this direction too. Can I tell you something a bit personal? Same 5-word architecture, same 4 jobs, pointed at yourself. It rings the doorbell before you walk your own vulnerability into the room, which means the other person opts in to receiving it, which means they're listening with their whole attention instead of being ambushed mid-sip. The same warnings apply double. Opening up follows the same floors, the same pacing, the same hours, not minutes. The person who unloads their childhood on a first coffee isn't being brave. They are skipping floors in the other direction, and it produces the same backing away from you effect. And your offers, like the questions, needs to be occasional. A staircase where one person does all the climbing isn't intimacy. It's a performance with an audience of one.
That's real. I know like 3 people that have had relationships with trauma dumpers, and none of them ended well. And that's exactly why, like what he said, they're just skipping floors when you didn't really offer to go to level 2. They just jumped right to level 4, and you're like, whoa, what the heck, bro? You don't want to be rude, so like you don't tell them like not to do that. And you're not like, stop talking, don't tell me, because that'd be like weird. Like you try to listen, and like even if you do listen because you don't want to like shut them down, it still makes, or like them opening up still makes it kind of weird, because it's like you're like, I guess they're trusting me now, so I should talk and listen to them. A lot of times when people like not trauma dump, but like trauma dump on like a minor scale, I like whenever I talk to people and they like say problems and stuff, I really have a hard time not just immediately trying to like fix it. So a lot of times I'm like, they open up to me, I listen, and the only really way I know how to respond to their problem, because I don't have the same problem, I'm like trying to tell them how to fix it and like kind of stuff like that. And some people don't really want to hear that, so they don't really receive it the best. But it's like, if someone does something to you and you're traumatized from it, or you're like hurt from it, and then you tell me, for me, I would just tell you how you should either like let it go or like not let it affect you anymore, and like what to do with it. But a lot of people just want you to like just listen and either sympathize with you and be like, oh, those feelings are totally valid and stuff, when in reality you're letting something, in the case of like relationships and like stuff like that, like with death and stuff, it's a little different, because that's a very sad thing and it's a very real thing. But like whenever someone's mean to you or like bullies you, and you hold on to that for like multiple years, in my mind, I'm like, I feel like you're just letting them win by holding on to that for so long and letting it affect you for however long it is, because you're holding on to that thing instead of letting it go and living your life happier than if you're thinking about it a bunch. Like if you just let it go, and like if you take your focus off yourself and think maybe they like bullied you because of something happening in their life, or like something that's happening with them, then you don't really care as much about what they did to you. Because if you don't let them, like if someone bullies you or like says something mean to you and you let that affect you, that'll like mess you up way more. And to me, that's a lot more free way to live instead of just holding on to every bad thing someone says about you and beating yourself up and like thinking about all that bad stuff and how you need to get better and whatnot. I don't know, just let it go. To me, it's like it's just not that big a deal. But like that's how I respond when people tell me stuff. Is I say all that long stuff and then they're like, "Oh, well, I actually wasn't looking for a fix. I was just wanting to tell I was just telling you." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, sorry."
The climbing business needs to be occasional. A staircase where one person does all the climbing isn't intimacy, it's a performance with an audience of one. But get the rhythm right, their step, your step, their step, and something happens that neither of you could have done alone. Aaron knew this, by the way. It's in the original paper, in plain academic language. The recipe he wrote is sustained, escalating, reciprocal, personal self-disclosure. 4 words doing all the work. Sustained. It takes time. Escalating. 1 floor at a time. Reciprocal. Both people climb. Personal. Real things, not shallow facts. 29 years ago, sitting in a journal nobody read, while the world bought the card deck instead. I think about that balcony a lot, because for 2 years I had it backwards. I thought Ola and I weren't close because we had nothing to talk about. The truth was the exact opposite. We had everything to talk about. 3 hours of it, stacked up and waiting. And the only thing missing was one person willing to spend one risky question to find out. She spent it. I just happened to be standing there when she did. We're good friends now, by the way. Have been for years. And a while ago, I finally told her that her one question on that balcony is the reason, and that I'd been studying why it worked. She thought about it for a second, shrugged, and said, "Honestly, I just really didn't want to talk about work again." Which might be the most accurate summary of the entire research literature I've ever heard. 2 years of "Hey, how is it going?" One question. Do the math on what you're currently waiting for. Subscribe for more videos like this.
Dude, that was a good video in my opinion. I hope it made sense to you guys too. His accent was a little strong. I'm gonna link the video in the description down below. I think you should go like that video, because if you like this video, it's basically just that video with me on it. So go like that video too. That guy's smart, bro. Thanks for watching. Peace.